And let's see.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we are live now. Yeah, okay. Okay, so welcome, Tessa. Thank you so much for joining me today. So for this series, in a series of conversations with graduates of online mentorship, 50-hour trauma resilience embodied yoga and social impact training for yoga teachers. So thank you so much. Just a couple of words. We are on my page on Aneta Idczak Yoga and Wellness, but if you don't know me, if you have not seen me before, my name is Aneta Idczak and I'm a yoga teacher and trainer. I deliver trauma trainings and I'm a founder of Golden Mandala Yoga School, offering trauma trainings, CPDs, 50-hour accredited further trainings, and also 240-hour yoga teacher training that includes trauma-informed and trauma-aware approaches. And today I have got with me Tessa Sanderson, who is one of the graduates of that 50-hour accredited trauma training. So welcome, Tessa, and thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure, pleasure. So Tessa is one of the graduates, as I said, of that training. But I wanted to start, before we move on to the training and kind of the impact that that training had on you and the work that you do, Tessa, I'd love for you to share with us, something about your work. What is the kind of work that you do as a yoga teacher, and a little bit about the kind of your journey. You know, how did you end up teaching the way that you teach, the way that you teach yoga? So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I finished my training 17 years ago. And I first got into yoga through meditation. So maybe not a route that a lot of people take, sort of where they go directly into the asana. And I trained with the British Wheel of Yoga. And over time, I focused more on different stages of women's lives. So pregnancy yoga, mother and baby yoga, and also well woman yoga. So very often people will come into one of those and then they'll sort of travel through, and they might go and take a few rounds. And I particularly love creating community. That's what I love to do, because at those different stages where, in the well women, we have some sort of menopausal women as well. So there's a big transition there as well. To support women through these rites of passage. That's something I'm very interested in. As well as the yoga, I run sort of puberty workshops and around cycle awareness. So very much trying to empower women about their bodies, so that they can make the decisions that are right for them going into birth or whatever else it might be. And I would say over the years of teaching, I teach more and more gently. Yeah, very much about the lived experience and tools that people can use in their everyday lives. So it's not that they're just coming once a week to a class, but they can pick up lots of useful tips that they can use, during their work, or if they're at home with children, that they can find that resilience.
I really love that. It's this is such an important part, isn't it? That we give our students and our clients tools that they can use, not just during that hour or an hour and a half that they are with us, but actually in their daily life. I think that's when the real transformation takes place. Because if they come for an hour class once a week, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But if they can bring it into the daily life, that will potentially make a huge difference.
I love it when I run birth preparation workshops. Sometimes the couples or the partner will say afterwards, actually I've taken these tools into my workplace. So that's a really nice sort of secondary benefit that they're getting. because, you know, although yoga is a very sort of ancient thing, it's so applicable to our everyday lives and supporting our nervous system. So
yes, completely. And I love the richness of the kind of work that you do, the rites of passage and working with younger girls and women, and looking at that kind of cycle and how you can take care of your own needs as your needs change throughout your life. That's such an important part, really. So go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, because I think these rites of passage are so connected, and so if we can get in there early and really support young people as they're going through that first big transition with puberty, there are so many things that they can take with them into maybe their first job or their first job interview, or lots of other situations where it helps if you can regulate your nervous system, so I sometimes think I'm asking people to take a really big journey with me in the pregnancy yoga if they've had a difficult time with their body up to that point, to sort of talk to them about trusting their body ready for birth. But I'm hoping that I'm sort of will make my life a lot easier by teaching the young women about cycle awareness and developing that relationship really early on, because then they'll bring that into pregnancy, they'll bring it into birth and menopause. So hopefully being a pregnancy teacher will just get easier and easier.
Yes, definitely. It's such an important thing, isn't it? There is that continuation in our life, and the earlier we can learn those skills and have those tools, the more we can take them through whatever we are going through in our life. So tell me, Tessa, so you completed the 50-hour online mentorship, Trauma Resilience Embodied Yoga and Social Impact. And I wonder what are the kind of things that you took from that training? What are the things that stood out for you the most?
One thing that might sound a bit simple, but I think is really profound, is that when you're working with somebody who's experienced trauma, it's the little steps that are really helpful, because you don't want to overwhelm them, add to their anxiety or anything like that. Because I think very often when you have done your yoga training and you love yoga, and maybe you go to multiple classes a week and you build up this body of knowledge that becomes second nature to you. And so leading a sort of normal general class, that you might find out in the community, where it's got multiple postures, it's got pranayama, it's got meditation, there is so much going on. And I think one of the things that the course helped was just to take a step back and think, wow, that is actually a lot of things that we as yoga teachers know. And it's sometimes taking just a few simple things that can make a really big difference to somebody, and explaining why you're sharing that technique. Because I've always done that in pregnancy yoga. Like, I've always brought in a sort of antenatal education component, but probably less so in my other classes. And what I've noticed since the course is that I'm spending a bit more time also just explaining the well woman. This is why I'm teaching you this particular breath, because it has X, Y, and Z benefits. And, if you, just explaining a little bit more of the background, so that people are more likely to invest time in practicing it outside of the class.
I love that. It's definitely that, the two things that you are talking about in here, the element of the psychoeducational stuff, helping your students and your clients understand what is going on and why you're teaching it and what are the benefits of it. And actually, yes, we all know breath is really great for you, and breath is, working with breath is great, but why this specific breath? What effects does it have when you practice it? Short-term effects, long-term effects. And really, it's what you're talking about. It's like we try to pack it in, and I've seen that so much. You go in and especially if you are new and if you are struggling a little bit, and coming to the class and trying to follow up with everybody, whatever they are doing, that thing about slowing down to experience more, slowing down to really notice, is it helping me to feel better, or is it helping, or is it making me feel more distressed or more anxious or more, that dysregulated response of the nervous system. And I completely agree with you that we forget, it's like you've been practicing or teaching for 17 years, practicing for loads more. And so things that seem really obvious, things that seem really simple, to somebody else might not feel that way at all.
Yeah. And I think something else that I really enjoyed about the training was that it did feel spacious, that there was time to check in with, how the previous week had gone, and check in how the material was landing, because very often in a course you don't get that. And I've been on yoga trainings where it's sort of a week intensive and you come away and a bit sort of and it takes you a good 6 months afterwards to integrate it and actually begin to drop that into your classes. And I think instinctively over the years, because I run a women's circle, and that is a lot about checking in. And so over the years, I have started to do that in my yoga classes, where I'll check in to see where people's energy levels are at, or I might check in, how did that particular practice land? And, already I sort of would say in my Well Woman class, because it starts at 8 p.m, and we start with the yoga nidra, I'd always check in with people after and say, if you're feeling really tired, you can carry on lying down for as long as you need to and take longer to come around. Or if you're ready for movement, let's get on with it, but very sort of permissive. And I think what was nice about the training is it really just helped me understand why I'd started doing some of those things instinctively, to have a bit of a sort of framework around, okay, that makes sense why that felt the right thing to do.
Great. And I love what you just said, because often when I speak with practitioners like yourself who've been doing it for a long time and are very attuned, they have that somatic empathy and being able to notice what's right. And we naturally, instinctively start doing that kind of stuff. But sometimes we don't have that other piece where we really reflect on it in a mindful, conscious way and say, yes, that's it, this is why I'm doing it, and this is the benefit of it. So it's really great to hear you say that. And in respect of your own practice, has the training in any way impact your own personal practice?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing practice every day, but it's sort of changed, I think, a little bit. I'm definitely checking with my felt sense every day. And the course inspired me to go on to a focusing course, because I'd been using a little bit that way of working in my coaching around periods and cycle awareness. But it's just so wonderful to have other people to connect with, and that's what I really appreciated in the training, was the buddying as well. Because otherwise, as a yoga teacher, it can be quite a lonely profession. Although you can be with lots of people teaching, it's not the same as being with your peers. And it was so lovely to connect with sort of like-minded people in the course. And then with the focusing, just being able to witness sort of other people connecting with their felt sense and deepening your own practice that way. Yeah, so I think there was so much packed into the training. Lots of sort of research mentioned, books, that is going to take me a while to sort of follow all the avenues. But I think what I liked was that was balanced with very practical, that we were leading towards designing our own 6-week course. Because I think often you're left with all this content and you don't know quite what to do with it. So as a result of the training, I came up with 2 courses because I was so enthusiastic. So I'd had it originally in my mind to do a course around sort of birth trauma, and particularly around if somebody's had a cesarean the first time and they want to try for a vaginal birth the second time, to support them to process that original trauma in a body-based way, and then support them with how the journey goes with the consultants and working, you know, out a plan. Because I think the nervous system is just so incredibly important, and there just isn't really, unless you pay for it privately, there isn't the support to process previous trauma in that way. So that was one course that I designed, but then I just had this sort of flash, oh, it would be amazing to explain to mums about the interaction between hormones and the nervous system, to help them, you know, because as a parent, you're holding the space for the child, tween, teen, but you don't very often get to be held yourself. And so I wanted to create something that would manage the parent's nervous system, and as a knock-on effect, the child. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. I thought it was amazing. You know, you came out, you created those 2 courses for 2 different groups. That just you know, and that really showed me again how when you bring this kind of work, it can slot in to any kind of focus. You know, you created a couple of different courses, mother and daughter, and then around pregnancy and birth trauma. You know, so a couple of other people created some courses around sexual abuse and working with women who experience sexual abuse and domestic violence. You know, other people in the past created stuff around body image. You know, so there is so much stuff that can be the focus. You know, it's not like yin yoga. You just teach yin yoga and there is like prescription for teaching yin yoga, but actually there is just bringing that quality and approach, trauma-informed approach and embodied resilience approach to whatever you do, and build it around it. And I was very impressed that you created two courses and that you are already running it, because you've already done a talk on birth trauma, I think, this week. And you have got loads more stuff planned.
The workshops are going to happen in May. So there was lots of interest, because I think actually for yoga teachers, as you start to go off into different niches, there often isn't actually that much CPD specifically for yoga teachers. You might be able to go off and join with other professionals. So there is so much scope, and I know we've had this conversation before, Aneta, but you know, actually all yoga teachers could probably do with looking at this trauma-informed approach, because it's likely, I mean, we're definitely going to have somebody in your class that has had some form of trauma. And so if you are aware of some of the signs and how they're presenting, you can look after your clients so much better. So I do hope in years to come that it actually becomes an integral part of any general training.
Yes, I completely agree with it. I mean, the 240 hours yoga teacher training that I'm running, and we will be running from October, includes modules on trauma and the nervous system, because the last year of our lockdowns and pandemics, we all have been affected. And, us as yoga teachers, we've been affected. We had to change how we work, but also all our students and clients have been affected. And I don't think that we've seen the last of it. And I think, there is a lot of stuff that we will be seeing in the months to come, if not years to come, not just with the elderly population, but also with the youngsters, that missed out on the whole year of schooling. Being with their friends and that social interaction. I think we are going to see quite a lot of impact long term from this. And
or another outcome of the course for me was sort of taking it into the workplace. So contacting my local maternity department and seeing whether there's scope for working with midwives and the healthcare professionals in that team to, because they've been experienced secondary trauma.
That's right.
After these people where partners haven't maybe been at the birth or not all the way through, or not been at scans where difficult news has had to be delivered. It's big.
Completely. And I love this part of your work as well, because we had conversations before, how do you make changes? And you make changes either on the top level through the policy, or you make changes through the grassroots levels, which is what you are doing now, impacting, your local community. And through that, you can make a really huge impact. Not through the, through the immediate community, but then how it spreads. And it could be potentially life-changing stuff for many people. Yes,
because in my discussions with somebody at the department, it was very interesting. She was saying there were some midwives that would totally be open to something that would help their mental health, but she said then there's the other half that would be a little bit like, oh, I don't want to sort of admit maybe that I'm really stressed. And so we talked about how we can put it across to them as also this is something that they can take directly into their work with the women in their care. So immediately it's rippling out to all the patients that they have coming to the department. So I think the effects can be massive.
Yes, completely. And it's the same for all of us. It's like there is so much of this kind of thinking about, well, because I'm a yoga teacher, or because I'm a midwife, or because I'm a therapist, I should be okay. I need to show that I am coping all right with it, forgetting that actually as a human being, you will be affected by it. And this is why knowing so much, knowing enough about nervous system, about, the triggers, your own responses, your own kind of conditioning of the nervous system, and how to move more towards regulation, and how to notice when you move more towards this regulation and choose differently to start moving more towards self-regulation is so important. It's just a lot of the stuff that we were talking in the training about was about can you work on yourself and on your own nervous system first, so then when you support others, when you work with others, you come from this more grounded, more centered, more embodied and stable place, rather than being completely overwhelmed and completely stressed out, and then trying from that space to support somebody who's also kind of stressed out and overwhelmed and maybe burnout. It's much harder.
I think there have been a lot of yoga teachers in the pandemic who maybe were traveling a lot, from studio to gym, and actually not being able to do that, realized how stressful that was and how much time they were using just in traveling. And so that there is a great opportunity here to rethink how we work as yoga teachers.
Yes.
But yeah, I was going to say also, I mean, because I finished my training 17 years ago, I think this just wasn't on the agenda then. It wasn't sort of in people's minds, this sort of trauma sensitive approach. But the research is, just been massive in the last few years even. So I would say to somebody, even if it was 5 years ago that you did your training, this is such a wonderful course to deepen your own practice, to consider all sorts of things that often you don't have time for in a general training. I know yours will be a bit different because you're coming through a particular lens. It's really exciting.
Yes, it is. And really, this training was created from really understanding that there is a need of it, and bringing that passion. The last 20 years of my work with trauma and crisis and trauma symptoms, and really loving yoga as well, and seeing how many of us as yoga teachers struggle with it. And obviously the pandemic kind of made it a little bit more urgent. So tell us how people can find your work, how people can see what you do, the courses that you run, and how can they find you and contact you?
Yeah, well, they can go to my website, tessayoga.co.uk, and you can also see about my books on there. I've written some books for children about changing bodies and about sort of pregnancy and cycle awareness. And I'm on Instagram as tessa.venuti.sanderson, and all the things I'm interested in, I do post there. So that's a really good way to sort of see what the next thing is that's coming up.
Lovely. And what's the next kind of talk that you do, if people are interested? What's the next thing on your calendar?
Well, the next one that's brewing is about the connection between puberty and about sex and birth. I'm trying to bring it all together. And a lot of that in some ways really centers around the nervous system, because I think very often we keep things very separate, and it's not, is it? Everything's connected. We carry everything with us. So that's the next free talk that's coming up. But the workshops you mentioned on birth trauma, people can find through the Yoga Teachers Forum.
Okay.
One of them is going to be about challenging births, and the other one is about stillbirth and miscarriage.
Okay, brilliant. Yes, because you're one of the teachers of the Yoga Teachers Forum, yeah. Which brings together lots of really great teachers, and allowing other yoga teachers to get CPDs and trainings and raise their knowledge and understanding, which is great. Okay, so thank you so much, Tessa, for joining me.
Well, thank
I really
you for
appreciate
training.
Thank you, and thank you for taking this time to talk with me, and for completing the training and sharing your knowledge, which is very valuable. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.